everyone. Thank you for coming along this evening on what I think is either been probably a very busy first day back after half term, or possibly we are in your half term. So thank you very much. It is appreciated. And thank you to Emma and the TA team who have invited me along today. This is our first collaboration with the TA team, hopefully the first of many. I'll just introduce myself first, and then I'll talk a bit through the session, and hopefully I've managed to keep a bit of time at the end for any questions and things, and we can have a little bit of discussion then. So I am one of the 2 maths product owners at Twinkl. I've taught for 19 years. In that time, I taught in a very small 1-form entry school and a huge 5-form entry junior school. So 2 very different extremes and quite different catchment areas as well. I've worked with a huge range of wonderful, wonderful TAs. So although I'm not a TA, I appreciate your value totally. And I also know that the role is just completely varied, which is caused a bit of problems when I was planning this session today to try to hit all the buttons, but I've tried as much as I can to keep it as generic but as useful for everyone as possible, whether you are new to TAing or you're really experienced, and depending on what sort of setting you're in. So I taught for 19 years, and I've been at Twinkl now for just over 2 years. I started off in an editor role, and I've been product owner for nearly a year now. So today's session is hopefully going to outline 5 key ways. I narrowed it down to 5. I could have done 25, but I didn't want to be here all evening. So 5 key ways that you can really provide support specifically for primary maths. And I also want to really give you a rationale. I know as TAs, you are not necessarily, and again, this will completely depend on your setting. It's not necessarily your job to make sure that your school are following Ofsted recommendations, but everything that I've recommended tonight, I have put in the snippets from the Ofsted subject report in maths, because even if you aren't the one that has to make the decisions, it's really useful for you to know the rationale behind it all. So it's all going to be there for you, and there's links to that report as well if you want a little bit of light reading. And hopefully also within that, I will share obviously some Twinkl activities and resources that you can use, as well as other things that you could use to support you in your role as well. So this is a very wordy slide. I'm just going to summarize it for you, but a couple of things to mention before we really get started. Because of the huge range of settings that you will all be in and the huge range of experiences you're bringing to tonight, it's a very general session. Now, also, we know as teachers and TAs that ideally TAs will be working with a huge range of abilities in the classroom, different groups of children. However, I think, I will say unfortunately, I think a lot of the time a TA's role is supporting children who maybe find it harder to grasp new concepts. So that will be the main focus. It's not the only focus. Everything I talk about today will be helpful for all children, but I've tended to think about the children who grasp maths a bit more slowly, which brings me on to a note about maths ability. Maths mastery came in, well, it was introduced really in curriculum 2014. Lots of schools have got mastery training under their belts now and are really going for maths for mastery, and you may have seen a change in the way that maths is taught in schools and settings. When I first taught at my 5-form entry school, we had math sets, 5 math sets from what we called the top set to the lower set. Obviously that is, well, it's completely detrimental to children to put them into ability groupings, particularly in maths. And there are exceptions to that. Obviously, certain children with certain needs do need to have a separate curriculum. But generally, children should be taught together in a mixed ability group. And we really try to use, I know I've already used it about 3 times, but we really try hard not to use the term ability when we're talking about maths teaching now. And we're talking about the attainment of children based on lots of things, not just how quickly they grasp new concept, but maths has got a lot to do with memory. If children have really, really good memory skills, then they're going to be able to recall much more quickly, which will free up cognitive load for other things. Also, confidence has got a lot to do with it. Resilience is massive in maths teaching, particularly reasoning. So I'm going to try to avoid it, and teachers should be trying to avoid it. But I also know from visiting various schools that some schools are still very much teaching in setted groups as well. So I will try to use terms like rapid graspers and slower to grasp rather than ability, because we try to avoid that where we can. And then this, yeah, just what I've already said, I have referenced the subject report. It's very new. It came out in July last year. It is a really, really useful report. It is worth reading the beginning, because they do say, you know, it's not a tick list, as Ofsted isn't a tick list, as much as we'd like it to be, and we could just go through it and highlight everything off. But it has got some really good findings in it. So I've tried to summarize those for you today. And this is just a link to the report for you. So that's there in the slides. And then I've just explained that the main thing really that is relevant to you in your role is that there is still a huge gap between low and high achievers and particularly disadvantaged and advantaged pupils. And that would be something that obviously is already on your radar. Where I have put the bits from the report, I've put them in a little blue box, a bit similar to the one at the bottom. I won't read through them every time because I'm sure you'll be able to do that yourselves. But just so you know where each of the recommendations have come from, and we can go from there. So narrowing it down to 5 was difficult, but I have. So just 5 key ways in which you can support specifically in maths. We could do a whole session on each of these, and when you fill in your feedback form at the end, it might be that you would like to have a session in the future specifically on one of these. But these are the things that we're going to talk about in a bit more detail today. Manipulatives and representations and how we can use them to support understanding in maths. Making overlearning and repeated practice enjoyable and engaging, or as enjoyable and engaging as we possibly can, particularly if you're doing the same thing daily. It's really important to try to keep that as engaging as possible for the children. We're going to talk a little bit about interventions, and that's both planned interventions and on the hoof interventions. And we're going to talk about the importance of using the correct vocabulary when talking about maths and teaching maths. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, your right as TAs, and the fact that you're here, you already know this, but your right to ask for CPD to help you to improve your subject knowledge if you need it, and your confidence in maths, because that is a big barrier in maths across the board with teachers as well. So those are the 5 key areas we're going to look at today. So we'll move on to the first one. So manipulatives and representations, using them effectively. I have just a little quote there from the Ofsted report. So teachers often use the concrete, pictorial, abstract approach, which is often referred to as the CPA approach. I know lots of you will have come across this before, to teach new ideas and methods. Pupils are often able to use the objects used in demonstrations themselves, which is really, really good. And it was helpful, and leaders were really happy with it. And we know that manipulatives are not just for one group of children. They are really, really important for all groups of children. You can use manipulatives brilliantly to teach algebra, to teach really deep understanding. So it's important that they're not just being limited to one group of children. Just a little bit about the approach, and if you're experienced, you probably have already come across it many times. It's about starting with the concrete, things that children can actually touch, feel, pick up, use, moving through pictorial methods, and I'll share a whole slide in a minute full of lots of lovely representations you can use as an abstract, as a bridge, to the abstract. So I've just put a little example there. If you were teaching number bonds to 10, so numbers that add up to make a total of 10, you might start by physically using 10 frames with different coloured counters. Then you might move on to using a pictorial representation of that, which could just be circles, and then you could move on to the abstract. And that is just one tiny example, but just to make it clear what I mean when I'm talking about the concrete, pictorial, abstract approach. These are just a few of the things that you might use, and you'll notice that some are almost in 2 categories, and that was done purposely. Concrete materials, hopefully you are seeing lots of these in your classrooms. Classrooms should have place value counters, Dean's blocks, counters, money, hopefully Numicon, a bit more expensive, but most schools do tend to have it. You might have bead strings and rec frames, and you'll see different things coming in all the time. They are fantastic, but there is also a lot you can do with just counters. So it's about knowing what you've got, making sure you know what's available to you in your setting, and thinking about how you can use it to support the learning. Pictorial, then we've got some favourites, which is a number line, and we've got a bar model there. We've got a part whole model, which is the cherry, sometimes called a cherry model, in the middle, and some fraction representations. And then we've got the abstract, and you can see, I mean, there's a vast difference, isn't there, between using counters and looking at that written method of subtraction, which can actually be quite scary for some children, particularly if they're coming to the concept for the first time. So this is just a sum up slide, really. I'm sure you could probably think of more. You're welcome to share. Some of you can think of some that particular favourites of things that you use in the classroom. I think I've got a couple of questions coming up around what you currently use. Yeah, so just you don't have to share, but if you wanted to share in the chat, maybe there's something that I haven't shared on that last slide that you particularly use to support maths. And it would just be interesting for me really to see how often, I mean, are you using manipulatives regularly in your maths lessons? Is it a daily thing? Is it something that happens only so often or only with certain groups of children? It would be interesting to know if you've got any thoughts there. Yeah, fraction walls and pieces are brilliant. One of my favorite things to do is create fraction walls with the children. I don't know, you know, the border rolls that you get, if you get all the different colors of border rolls, cut them all to the same size, children can make their own fraction walls. If you can get children to make their own maths resources, they will love using them much better than the ones that are provided for them. Not always possible, but something like that is really possible. Yeah, any like small world things can be used all the time for maths. Yeah, it's one of my favorites, border roll. The children loved it as well. Quite an interesting lesson actually in saying, okay, we can do the halves and we can do the quarters. How are we going to do the fifths? It's really, really good activity to see what their understanding of is, how they're going to divide a border roll into 5 exactly the same size pieces. Yeah, double-sided counters, brilliant, so popular now, usually red and orange, but not always. Just using different counters as well can help. Clocks. Yes, I haven't talked about time today. That would be a whole other session. But yeah, clocks really important. It's really important that children are seeing a whole range of different things and understanding how to use it. And practical is always the way to start, because actually it's fun, it's engaging. You can't go wrong with it because it's not set in stone. You can take photographs so you can evidence it. It's a really good place to start, which brings me really nicely onto the next bit then. I think when we first started talking, keep your ideas coming, by the way, because I will go back and look at the chat. When we first started talking about the CPA approach, which was quite a long time ago now in schools, it very much felt like we were starting with the concrete, and then we were doing the pictures, and then we were moving to the abstract. And over time, that has changed a little bit, because what is really important is that children know what they're doing and why. Yes, they might just start with just concrete, but there has to become a point where you move that on. The goal being that everybody will reach the abstract stage and have an understanding of that. When I first started teaching in one of my schools and we were still doing sets, the lower set very much were doing all their addition and subtraction with counters. It was great, but there wasn't anything more than that. So as soon as you took those counters away, they were stuck. So it's really, really important that you're not just going from concrete to pictorial or even just straight to abstract. It's having a bridge between them. I've got a video to show you next, which is one of our concept videos, which shows how you can use the concrete alongside the abstract. It's a video, so it's not concrete, it's on the screen, so it's more of a picture, but it gives you an idea of how you can do them both together. It's a really good idea. Start with concrete. Maybe if you're working one-to-one or with a small group, they could be doing the calculation with concrete materials and you could annotate and you do the abstract version. Eventually they can do both, or they can work collaboratively in a pair and do both together. And then eventually, of course, you can take away, and it might take a long, long time, but eventually the idea being that that scaffold can be removed and they've got a greater understanding of those abstract methods and why they're using them. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed that the video plays. This is one of our fabulous maths concept videos. There is a link to them in the reflections document that you'll receive. They are for children. The idea is that the children will be able to access them. However, we've already found lots of teachers are using them for their own CPD. They're a really good way of seeing how you can introduce a concept, particularly if maths is not your subject area. So this is just one. I'm going to play it from the beginning because there's a nice little bit of vocabulary, which we'll talk about in a minute. I'll play it from the beginning. There's a little bit about vocabulary, and then you'll see the presenter going through using place value counters alongside the abstract. So it's just a little way to show you. You could listen to me then. Right, okay, let's have a look. Fingers crossed it works.
Hi, this video is here to help you with short division with exchanging. We'll be dividing a 4-digit number by a 1-digit number. Before we start, let's remind ourselves of the layout and mathematical language we use when completing short division. In this calculation, 639 is the dividend, 3 is the divisor, and the 213 is the quotient. When we carry out short division, we lay out the calculation like this. We're now going to divide a 4-digit number by a 1-digit number. We can use place value counters to help us with this. What is 6,543 divided by 3? Because our divisor is 3, we're going to split the place value columns into 3 rows. First, we divide the thousands, as this is the place value column with the highest value. We're going to divide the 6,000s by 3. We can divide the thousands equally with none left over. 6,000s divided by 3 equals 2,000s, so we can write a 2 in the thousands column above the dividend. Now we divide the hundreds. We can share the first 3 hundreds equally, giving us 100 in each row. But we are then left with 2 hundreds left over. We can't share these equally, so we'll need to exchange them. As there is 100 in each of the 3 groups, we write a 1 in the hundreds column above the dividend. We then need to exchange the 2 remaining hundreds for tens. How many tens are equal to 2 hundreds? That's right, we exchanged the 2 hundreds for 20 tens. Now we have 24 tens, so we write a 2 in front of the 4 in the dividend. Now we divide the tens. When we divide 24 tens by 3, we can share them out equally with none left over. There are 8 tens in each row, so we write an 8 in the tens column above the dividend. Finally, we divide the ones. We can divide 3 ones equally by 3 with none left over. 3 ones divided by 3 equals 1, so we write a 1 in the ones column above the dividend. Let's have a look at another example.
Okay, so that showed you, I purposely chose short division because it is one of those ones which is quite tricky. And if you ask adults to do short division, they quite often will say things like, well, how many 3s goes into 21? Take that and carry the 1. And it can get ever so confusing for children. And adults have learnt it. The problem being, of course, is maybe they've learnt the method. And so when their children come on to maybe doing decimals, they're not 100% sure how to carry that method over because it's a learnt method rather than understanding. So you could see there how Laura used the place value counters alongside the abstract. And sometimes you would have to do that for a really long time, but eventually you would find children going to just the abstract. Oh, I know what to do here. Yeah, this is where I would exchange my 20. Oh, right. Okay, so I put my 2 in there. So it's about talking it through, really scaffolding that abstract. So manipulatives, yeah, I mean, they are so valuable. Representations also have a really good place as well, though. So I just wanted to share this quick one. Again, I could have done a whole session on this. I didn't want to get too carried away, but this one is just a way of me showing how you can use counters, relate that to a number line. Number lines are notorious of being difficult. You know, children have a really good understanding, say, for example, of fractions, and then you ask them to put on a number line and it just goes out of the window because they get scared by them. But number lines are everywhere. A clock is a number line. The dial on a weighing scale is a number line. A meter stick is a number. They are everywhere, but it's just calling them a number line, saying you must put it on a number line, suddenly gets this fear into some people. So it's about how you can support your understanding of that, whether it's with counters like the one at the top, or using a normal, a standard number line, either labeled or none. And then at the bottom, I put a bar model. Now, bar modeling, again, is something that I'm really passionate about. And we've got some brilliant resources on site about bar modeling. Definitely something maybe we could think about for a future TeachMeet, because there's so much you can do with them. But a bar model is a number line. It just looks a little bit different. And as soon as children know these representations, they will start loving them and using them. I did when I first started doing some bar model training, my class very much said, Mrs. Brown loves the bar model, and it was every time, oh, here's the bar model again. But eventually they loved it as well because it is so versatile and so really easy to use. So there's just a few representations there to show with you. So that was a whistle-stop tour of manipulatives. There's lots of them, but just to finish off, I just wanted to share with you, really, just so you don't have to listen to me for a couple of minutes. But I've put a snip there of an example of a piece of work. So we are talking, I think it's year 4, and they're ordering fractions from smallest to greatest. The top row is the sheet. The bottom row is the answer they've given. So I just want your ideas, really. If you are tasked with working with a child or group of children who are ordering fractions, they might have a sheet of these problems. This is the first one. And what they have ended up doing is looking at the numerator first and ordering by the numerator and then ordering by the denominator. What sorts of manipulatives or representations might you use to support understanding? And if you've got some ideas, please do pop them in the chat. I'll just stop talking just for a minute, grab a quick drink, but put some ideas down, and then I'll share some ideas with you in just a minute. Yeah, so there's that fraction wall again, which is a bar model. A fraction wall is a bar model. So that's a perfect example of what I was saying before. And yeah, when you're converting them, I suppose that's another question itself. If you're converting those fractions to a common denominator, which is what you would want the children to do at this stage when they're ordering fractions, how would you do that? You know, would you use fraction walls? Would you draw bar models? Would you, I mean, you can make a bar model with coloured multilink or coloured counters just by laying the pieces out. So you could have 1 yellow piece and 7 red pieces, and then scale that up to 28 and change it. So yeah, fraction wall is the go-to, but there are lots of other things you could do to support understanding that. You might not have a fraction wall, so it's about thinking about what you could use that you might have just in your classroom if you don't have fraction walls, of course. Fractions tend to be talked about in circles, and you'll always see fractions shown in circles when you're doing halves and quarters. Much simpler to use them as bar models. Of course, it's important that children see all different representations, but if you use a bar rather than a circle, much easier to compare them. So much easier to compare 5/8 and 3/4 on 2 bars than it is to do it on 2 circles. So just a little tip there for when you're using fractions. Okay, so manipulatives, so useful for all groups of children. The next one then is talking about overlearning. So I know from experience that often TAs are tasked with maybe working with a child or a small group of children to really work on what in maths we call those key instant recall facts. Those are the things that the Department of Education and the curriculum think the children need to know. What they use the term to automaticity, doesn't really trip off the tongue, but that's the term that they use. It's about having those facts all the time. And you can see there what Ofsted have said about it. They found that sometimes recall hampered children once they got to year 3 and 4. They could get by because they could work it out, their number bonds, for example. But as they got further through the school, it meant that they were just getting by, which meant that they couldn't learn the new knowledge because they were too busy. Their cognitive load was filled up with finding those facts, which meant that then they couldn't apply the new knowledge to new learning. So I think there was a time when teachers very much thought, we can't just keep doing this over and over again. We have to move on. And that is true. A lot of schools now are doing maths meetings daily where they concentrate on these recall facts, or using interventions or TAs such as yourselves to work on those things with the children. So I've experienced children saying to me, oh, do we have to do number bonds of 10 again? And yeah, there is a reason for it, and it's really important that we do that, but it's also important that you use them in different ways. I'm just going to skip on to that, so we're running a little bit behind. So if you are doing, for example, number bonds, it's about finding different ways to do it. I've shared with a few of them there for you. This is a collection we've got on site at the moment, which is specifically aimed at Key Stage 2 children, because we know that there are children who reach Key Stage 2 and have these gaps in their knowledge. So this one particularly, this lot here that I'm showing you is particularly for Key Stage 2, but we have a wealth of number bonds things there, and there's a lovely TA resource which is progressive steps for teaching number bonds to help you with that as well. But it's about finding fun ways. If you had 5 different ways, maybe you'd say Monday is the maze day. We'll do the maze on Mondays, and we'll do the maze and we'll time it. The only way children are going to improve automaticity is by practice, which goes against the understanding that when you're learning new things, you don't want to just do practice for practice sake. So that's why Ofsted have specifically talked about it separately, those recall facts, and it's number bonds, times tables, things like days of the week, days in a week, calendar months, all things like that, key instant recall facts that they really need to be able to recall as quickly as they can without having to use fingers or equipment. So you might use a maze, you might do a game. Again, if you've got a group, it's easier because you a little bit of healthy competition, but you can always provide that competition, of course, if they can beat you. We've got a whole wealth of games. You've also got some digital games on site which you could use. There are lots of things out there that are available. If your school subscribes to Times Tables Rockstars, there's Roll Your Times Table. So there's all sorts of things out there to practice number bonds. Or similar facts, it's about making it as interesting as you can, because, and I was going to add this in as one of the key things, but I've just sort of woven it through, children's relationship with maths is really important. There is lots of negativity around maths. We hear from parents even all the time, oh, I can't do maths. Oh, our dad has to help her with the maths homework because I can't do it. Oh, we can't do it. We didn't like maths. I hated fractions. And it's a lot of negativity. And unfortunately, that seeps in. So it's really important that throughout all of this, we are trying to raise the positivity of maths and the love of maths. And the best maths classes aren't about the ability of the children. It's about that feel and going into the classroom. Actually, these children are loving it. They're really loving it. And, you know, you might have to fake that. You might not have you might not have the same love of maths as I do, but you might just have to fake that. You know, you can say you found it a struggle. Absolutely. You can say, actually, yeah, this is quite a tricky area. But shall I tell you what I did to make it a bit more easy to understand? Really positive, real growth mindset is really important, because if you turn children's relationships off with maths, it's quite hard to get back. I'm lucky enough to do a few tutoring sessions with GCSE pupils who loved maths, and then somewhere along the line the relationship got muddied a little bit and they don't anymore. So it's really, really important that you try to keep that ethos of positivity and maths being wonderful, and schools do really, really well at that with things like Rockstars competitions, and there's loads of things out there that schools are doing to try to keep children really engaged with maths, which is great. So that's just a few little things that you can find on the Twinkl website to help you. This was lovely, and I was so excited by this when they mentioned how important songs were. Ofsted said, yes, singing the times tables is brilliant. Children retain it more, they talk about it, they remember it more. My other subject specialism was music, so this was music to my ears to hear that actually they're saying, yeah, this is what they want people to be doing. We know a lot of us might have learned our times tables through remote learning, but that is a way to learn them. You know, saying it over and over, as boring as it might be, which is why songs are really, really good, will help to embed it in our understanding. So we have got a whole range of times table songs. We're not the only ones. There's lots out there. We have a whole range of times table songs with our times table characters there, who also feature in some of our Go games. So it's not just about sitting and writing. You might sing, you might chant, you might roll a ball. You know, really good way to practice times tables is just to say the times table, throw the ball to the next person, say the times table, throw it back. If your school does the daily where they're going outside every day, chant tables while you're doing it. You know, anywhere and everywhere. If you can do it, make it fun, make it exciting, do it in silly voices. Absolutely. So that is a really good way to celebrate maths culture, and that's just our Twinkl, just a few of our Twinkl characters there. We do have the whole set. And finally, digital learning. You know, it's really important to have that. I know sometimes we can be a little bit tied by what devices we have, but there are, again, a lot of apps and games out there. We've actually got 3 current maths apps. There's another one in development at the moment. We've got a 100 Square app as well, but just apps that just are something a little bit different, and things that you can play and record your score and try to beat your score, and games. So that's just a small selection of things to try to make things as interesting as possible when you're over learning the same thing, because it can become tedious for you as well as the children. And I think if you're feeling, oh no, I've got my times table session next, the children are probably going to feel like that as well. So change it up a little bit, try to maybe do something different a bit each day, get the children involved. They could probably come up with some games that they could play as well. So if you can get them involved, then that'd be really helpful as well. Okay. Okay, interventions. So this is hit the buttons, brilliant, perfect example of a game that really helps with times tables and recall. So In an ideal world, I think it would be great if we could do a pre-teach session before a maths lesson, then have a maths lesson, and then have a post-teaching intervention the same day. We know that we don't probably have time or space in school to do that every day. It would be great if we did, but not necessarily. Use of maths meetings has improved that a little bit. Some schools have a dedicated time where they work on things like this. But if you are lucky enough to be able to do interventions, I've got a couple of things just to share with you. Pre-teaching doesn't have to be, it sounds like it's you teaching the lesson before the lesson. Doesn't have to be that. It can literally just be, let's look at what we're going to be doing today's lesson. Here's the worksheet, for example, that we're going to be doing. Do we understand all the words in there? Can we think of something that we might use on hand to help us? Let's go and get it ready so we're ready for the lesson. Shall we do the first one and see how we get on? Do we know what we need to know to be able to access the lesson? It's not teaching the lesson before the lesson happens. It's thinking about what might be helpful beforehand, if nothing else, to give children that little bit more confidence. And this is not necessarily children who are slower to grasp, understand new concepts. Could be all children. And some children will have needs that might mean that actually they go into panic when they see something new. Just showing it to them first and talking through it can do the world of good. Same day interventions then are the idea being that they happen after the lesson. We do have a whole collection of same day interventions on site. They are brilliant. They are really, really good. There is a link there to the landing page. I'm just going to share one with you. You won't be able to necessarily read the text, but I just want to show you what it looks like because you may not have seen them before, and it's a really, really good resource. So they're done by year group and they're very much linked to the national curriculum and the schemes of work that you might be using in school. This is a year one about using number lines. They all come with this really, really important bit at the top in orange, which is, can the children do this? If they can't do those things, actually, there's no point doing this intervention. You need to deliver the interventions on the things that are in the box. So if children can't count 20 and back down, using number lines is going to be really, really hard. So you might pick that up and think, actually, I've been asked to do this, but I know that these children can't do that yet. So that might become the focus for your session. You might actually have a counting session, because with the best will in the world, if the children don't have the skills to access it, they're not going to be able to get what they need to out of it. So each of our interventions comes with that little prerequisite check, a little bit about what children might particularly find difficult. Children do tend to fall into the same sort of misconceptions, so you'll have a little bit there to help you. Then, and I think this is particularly helpful when you're low on time, you've got a complete list of what you need. Any resources that you need that are included are in blue, so you can download them, or anything you might find in your classroom will be there. And then you've got vocabulary. So you could almost have a plastic wallet with the paperwork in it and all the things you might need behind it. And then there's a little bit of background for you about what they need to do. And then there's a whole load of key questions. This is a whole sheet, but I've just put a little section here. Whole load of key questions, what you should do, and then the questions in green about what you should ask the children, how you can encourage that maths talk. So you've got something to help you there, particularly if your subject knowledge of the particular concept isn't really strong. And then at the end, it's normally a game, something extra, which we appreciate that actually we don't always have the time to do a 20-minute intervention. If you only have 5 minutes to go through the main one, and then you might have 5 minutes to do a game, there's normally a game there. And it also comes with a little home learning slip. So you can send it back. Oh, it doesn't have to be home learning, of course. You could say, well, put that in your tray and do it in tomorrow morning when I don't know if you have like early morning time or whatever. So just something extra. And there's a feedback sheet, so you can put the names of the children and your feedback for the teacher as well. So that was a very, very quick, this is a same day intervention, but you may not have seen them. So it's definitely something that is worthwhile for TAs to know that exists. And we have a huge collection of them on site. So planned interventions, brilliant. We're planned, we've got our stuff together, but it doesn't always go like that. I know, sometimes something will happen, an assembly is cancelled, or it's a wet break and something happens and it pushes everything back, or something happens that means that our plans change. That's what teaching is, isn't it? That's what school is like. So quite often I know that some of my very, very best TAs would say, well, that's okay, I'll just take this group and we'll do this. Brilliant. And for a teacher, that is lovely to hear, but it's really important that we're using that time purposefully. So you might have, and if you have, you can share it in the chat, some go-to games that you use for filling time. But if you don't, I've just got a few little suggestions for you, and they're things that you don't need lots of equipment for. Dice are amazing. You can do loads of things with dice, particularly 12-sided dice, and schools do tend to have them a bit more now, because 12-sided is perfect for times tables. Or if you've got a 10-sided dice that's got multiples of 10 on, you can get some brilliant dice. The children love them as well because they're all sorts of funky shapes, and they really love working with them. And they're fairly cheap, and things that you can just keep in your pencil case or whatever. So you've got them. So you might roll 2 dice and multiply them, so you can get it first. Maybe you have to be the first person to get the total of whatever by adding up the numbers. You could roll 3 dice and just practice adding 3 numbers. Lots and lots of different things you can just do with dice, as long as it's purposeful and related to the age group of the children you're working with. Number cards are another one. If you happen to have giant dice, they're brilliant. We used to have those as well, those foam ones that we use on playground. And children will often play with them and do maths games in their own time if they're on the playground. It's amazing. Number cards, so countdown is a favorite of children. Love countdown. They love playing with numbers. It is really, really purposeful, because spotting relationships and having a good understanding of numbers and how they work is key to maths understanding, all maths understanding. Being able to play around with numbers is a really key skill in being able to understand difficult concepts. So a countdown is a fabulous one. And you can use number cards, or you can just pick some numbers out of the air. It doesn't matter, because it actually doesn't matter if you can't get to the total. It's about the trying and the discussing. So you could do countdown. If you've got number cards that have representations on, so we've got some of those on site. We've got some Numicon ones, we've got some base 10 ones. You can play matching pairs. Again, yes, it's a 5-minute activity. It's a time filler, but it's really, really useful. It helps with our recall. We're not just playing a game for the sake of playing a game. It means something. And yeah, countdown. I mean, I had children that just love countdown. And just having it on the board. You don't even need to talk about anything with it. You could have it on a whiteboard with your group while you're getting yourself sorted. There you go. See if you can find the total. Brilliant. Perfect use of a free few minutes. Loop cards take a little bit more preparation, because you need to find them. But if you've got a set of loop cards, and again, we've got loads of them, so those are the ones where you have I am 50, who is 3 times 2, and then the person who's 6, I say I am 6, who is, and so on. Not just practicing recall, but also practicing communication and listening skills, which is, as we know, is really, really important for all areas, but particularly maths. And time it. If you have the same group every day, see how quickly they can get. And it's amazing, actually, that little bit of let's try and beat our time can be really, really powerful. And bingo as well, dominoes, all those things that are quite easy to do and can be sort of, oh well, we don't need to do that. Is it purposeful? Yes, it is. If you're practicing recall, it's purposeful learning, and Ofsted have said so. It's so important, particularly younger children, to embed those skills. Okay, so that's interventions. We've talked about planned interventions and interventions at short notice, both of which have their place, but some are easier to plan for than others. We talked about this one earlier when we watched Laura and the maths concept video, and I particularly chose that one because it used specific maths vocabulary which we don't necessarily have in other areas. It used dividend, quotient, and divisor. And I think for teachers, when we first had to start teaching children, that was like, well, I don't think I ever knew that they were called that. But it is amazing that if you give children the vocabulary they need, their ability to discuss maths, talk about maths, and reason with maths improves drastically. Instead of saying, if you take the first number and you double the second number and then you get the third number, which is very, very generic and not very clear, to be able to say, actually, if we take the dividend and we then divide by the divisor, the quotient will be, it's just giving them the tools to be able to talk about their maths. And I think we don't give them their due normally about this hard vocabulary. Children know it, children learn it, and they use it really, really well. So yeah, vocabulary is really important for reasoning and problem solving. At Key Stage 2, we are still finding that children's arithmetic on their Year 6 SATs is really, really strong. Reasoning and problem solving papers, the paper 2 and paper 3, are and paper 2 in lots of cases, are not as strong because they don't have that reasoning skill. And it doesn't have to just be written. Children should be reasoning all the time when they're talking to you. I mean, if they're working in a TA supported group, brilliant, because you're going to be drawing out that conversation just by talking to them about it. So vocabulary it can be a tough one. STEM sentences are a fantastic way to use maths vocabulary. Quite often planning, so for example, the White Rose scheme of work comes with STEM sentences. Lots of schemes of work have them in there. Our Planet scheme has STEM sentences built in. It's basically a way to frame the maths for the children to use. So they need an example, either by you giving the example, or on that one you can see it says the whole has been split into 8 equal parts. Each part is 1/8 of a whole. 5/8 is shaded. 5/8 is 5 1/8. And then they have a different one, a different image or representation or calculation, and they have the exact same sentence just with the gaps, and they then need to fill in the gaps with the correct numbers or words. The idea being that they don't have to struggle around to find all of the words, but their understanding of the maths is there if they can fill in those gaps. Rounding is another one. So you really are consolidating what children need to do to be able to round. So 6.8 is between 6 and 7. 6 is the previous whole number. 7 is the next whole number. 6.8 is nearest to 7. So 6.8 is 7 when rounded to the nearest whole number. Lots and lots of really good vocabulary all the time. And it can be hard because actually sometimes you won't necessarily know what the vocabulary is. I've got something to share with you in a minute that might help with that. But it's really important that we're using the right language all the time with children and expecting them to do it as well. All children, expecting them to use that language as well. A way that you can do that can help you with understanding your vocabulary and the children as well is by using knowledge organisers and word mats. So knowledge organisers, when they were first introduced, were supposed to just be one page, a one-page summary of a topic. We found out quite quickly that trying to fit everything on one page was quite tricky. A knowledge organiser isn't a curriculum, but it's everything you might need as a reminder, hopefully a visual reminder, to work within that area. So this is an example, I think this is a year 3 one, of an example of place value, and you can see there you've got lots of different representations, lots of different language. One thing I would say is, I mean, these are lovely. If you work with children regularly, it's a great idea to do their own. You might have working rules in your classrooms. That's what a working rule should be. It should be a class knowledge organizer. We're adding to it all the time. We're putting our representations on it. We're maybe using it to help us answer questions. We might put some vocabulary on there. We might stick some manipulatives up there. A working rule is effectively a giant knowledge organizer. So getting the children involved in knowledge organizers, again, if you can get them involved, they're going to be a lot more engaged than if you're just handing them a piece of paper. Although I appreciate having time to do that isn't necessarily something we've got in a classroom these days, but they are there. So knowledge organisers is a perfect way to reinforce vocabulary. Word mats are another one. Not quite so in depth. They're more about the language. You can get maths dictionaries, but they're not always particularly useful. They go out of date very, very quickly. If they're printed dictionaries, just like any dictionaries, they go out of date. If you can make dictionary, and now is not the time of year maybe to start it, but in September, have an exercise book, create a maths dictionary, create a class one, create your own one, do one with your group or with individual children. If children can put their own examples on a page to explain what a word means, they're more likely to remember it. And then they can refer back to it. It's there. It's not cheating. It's there to help them and support their understanding. And if you are not sure of any vocabulary, I've put a link there to the NCETM, which is if you haven't seen the website before, it's not always very easy to navigate, but they are the people who run the maths hubs and do lots of the work for maths mastery. And they've got a brilliant maths glossary, which was my go-to particularly, for any educators, if you're changing year groups, particularly if you're going, say, from early years to year 6, having that go-to for that vocabulary is fabulous. So there's a brilliant glossary there from the NCTM, which is worth bookmarking or at least knowing that it exists. Okay, so maths vocabulary, really important. And the final one then, before we have a little bit of question answer at the end, is, I am very well aware that TAs are expected to be doing more and more all the time. And the fact that you are here means that you are really keen to do that. You are entitled to professional development, of which you've just attended some, so that's great. But do ask for it if you're not having it. And you really need to have a good understanding of your own school setting. You can't get that from a generic CPD event, but ask your maths leader or your SLT if you really want to know a little bit more about how the maths curriculum works. I mean, hopefully you're invited along to staff meetings and things, but be aware that that's what you're entitled to, and this is from the Ofsted report, so this should be provided by your school. You don't have to, I'm not asking you to put this in the chat, I just want you to think about this one for me. How would you rate your own confidence in maths from 1 to 10? You don't have to share, this is just for you to have a thought. So are you really lacking in maths confidence, or are you hugely maths confident? Thinking about that on a scale. And how can you be sure, if you are at the lower end of the scale, and we will probably, within this group, we'll probably have a huge range, how can we ensure that we promote a positive, a positive maths ethos? It's hard, isn't it? If you're not somebody that finds maths easy, or you haven't had a good experience of maths yourself, being able to support children, it can be really hard. But actually, it's okay to talk about that. As I said, it's okay to say, actually, I find this really difficult to understand, but what helps me is this. You can be in it together. You're all in it together. Mastery is about being in the maths journey together, the whole class, educators as well, teachers, TAs, everyone going on that journey. And if you do happen to have some free reading time, I've just shared with you, that is my favourite maths book by the wonderful Jo Bowler. And if you are a Twitter person, you can follow her, she's fabulous. Is all about helping children learn and love maths. And it's so important. I mean, for me, it's easy because I love maths, but it's hard. And yeah, if you are changing from different key stages, different settings, different types of schools, what children learn in year 2 is so different to year 6. And if you haven't experienced them all, you won't know how it all links together. It's really hard. So there is a lot out there to help you. I did mention, we watched a bit of one of these earlier, but we have a huge collection of concept videos. The whole of the year 6 curriculum is covered through concept videos, and we have just done year 5, and we're doing key stage 1 at the moment, and then we're going to fill the gap in the middle. So they're coming all the time. New ones are coming on every day. And although they are child facing, you can use them, and you can use them with the children. You could watch it together with the children. If you don't have time to watch it ahead of a lesson, it can be part of your input, having somebody talk through a different way. And sometimes you think, oh yes, why didn't I think of that? There are so many ways of doing maths, and even somebody who taught maths for a long time and has a real love of maths, there's new ideas all the time. So seeing somebody else do it can be quite an eye-opener sometimes. So that's a really good way for you to work on your subject knowledge if you know that it can be quite tricky, and particularly if you're higher up the school. I mean, the things they have to do in year 5 and 6 maths, particularly year 6, are quite tricky. And although some schools very much go down that we've got to teach to get a mark in a test, to teach understanding of those really hard concepts like algebra, so important and quite tricky. So do use what's out there. So as well as maths concept videos, we have, there's been some more maths TeachMeets. They're not specifically for TAs, but they will be really helpful if you have time. Thinking about manipulatives in Key Stage 2. There's a questioning one there by our maths advisor, and a TeachMeet about interventions, and there are more coming all the time. I know the TA segment has some fantastic CPD as well. As Emma said at the beginning, there's so many events out there for you to access if you've got time, of course. I know it's not always easy to fit them in. And just, I mentioned this at the beginning, but the TA segment at Twinkl work really I'm to provide resources that are really for you guys. I mean, I've talked from a very much maths background, and I'm a teacher, so I've tried really hard to put myself into your shoes. But there's so much on the Twinkl website already that can help you with maths specifically, and that's just a few there that I thought I would share with you at the end.